Good evening. I'm David Smith, and this is Week in Review. This is our 25th episode, and this evening we'll be discussing CISPA. We'll also be discussing H.R. Bill 375, and we'll discuss the continuing scandals in the White House and the Department of Justice. Good evening again. I'm David Smith, and I'm here with our co-host, Eric Hoffman, who joins us by telephone from San Diego, California. Our co-host and producer, Daniel Moran, who's with us in the studio, where we have a whole bunch of new audio equipment, which should improve the transmission of our broadcast. We'd like to remind you of our Twitter hashtag, WIRTV. We'd also like to remind you of our email address, David, Eric, or Daniel at weekinreview.tv. We'd like to hear from you. We'd like to receive any comments, criticisms, observations, or questions you may have, and we'll be happy to respond to them. Well, this week I'd like to start off with a couple of events in Washington which have an impact on all of us. The first one passed probably without much notice. It was H.R. Bill 375, which has passed and provides for the security of all government buildings against any protesters or gathering of individuals who might be dissenting against any government position when the president is in the building or when an individual assigned Secret Service protection is in that building. This means that if the president wants to prevent any protest from occurring against any of his policies, and he suspects that perhaps one of his cabinet officers might begin to be questioned or opposed, he can assign them a single Secret Service agent to go with them, and all of a sudden, no one can protest in that building. No dissent of any kind can take place while that individual is in that building. So we have another instance of an impingement on our freedom of speech and our freedom of association, and our freedom of the right to assemble and petition the government for redress of grievance. What do you gentlemen think about this one?
I think this is incredible because the Democrats, imagine this 5 years ago when Bush was getting protested everywhere. Even at his daughter's wedding they had protesters, and now all of a sudden the Democrats are sponsoring a bill like this.
Well, I think the president's suffering so much in the polls, and and a lot of the protesters are not Tea Partiers; they're progressives who are protesting his policies. He is not.
Well, it's an easy way to get around the Constitution, is what it is.
No, that's what it's designed to be.
Exactly.
And this obviously, I think this is going to go to the Supreme Court very quickly. And the court's going to have to make a decision, but their 2011 through 2012 term ends in June. So this may not be addressed until the 2012-2013 term that won't begin until October of this year.
Well, I hear there's a lot of protests on both sides scheduled for June and July this year. I heard the Catholic Church is getting ready to protest, and of course, we're going to have the return of the Occupy movement.
Yes. So the president and his party are facing a lot of opposition, and it's very vocal and very organized. I think they're trying to keep the media from getting any footage of such protests.
Yeah.
Because you have to remember back in a year or so ago, there were 2 million people that protested in a march in Washington, none of that received any coverage from the mainstream media.
Well, from what I hear about the Occupy movement, remember they were already trampling on property rights and intimidating small business owners around Zuccotti Park, so I'm sure it's going to escalate. Maybe they just want a way to shut it down. I don't know.
Well, you have to remember also the political conventions. Of course, the president has, and the vice president have Secret Service protection. So that will keep the media away from the, and the protesters away from the Democratic convention. It will also keep the protesters and the media away from the Republican convention because the Republican nominee automatically receives Secret Service protection.
Yeah, I believe Mitt Romney already has received some Secret Service protection.
So this is designed to keep the massive protests at both political conventions muted as much as possible, because there are a lot of very upset, better to say pissed off people in this country.
Yeah, everybody's wondering when Recovery Summer was 2010, we're 2012, and no one's recovered.
Yes, and there's going to be, and of course the G8, not the G8, the NATO summit in Chicago next month. This will provide, because the president will be there and all the heads of state receive Secret Service protection. So that's going to keep them away from the NATO summit in Chicago. So they'll be able to pretty much hermetically seal that event off and prevent any type of protest taking place at the event itself.
Yeah, you actually, when you said that, a light just came on in my head that this is probably to protect these international organizations, because there's growing and growing dissent to, well, as you know, I don't like NATO, the IMF, or the UN.
Yeah, each of these, the president of the IMF, or the International Bank, and so on, the BIS, the Bank for International Settlements, all these individuals are given diplomatic status. Therefore, they merit a Secret Service protection squad whenever they come to this country. So I'll bet you'll see more and more of these events occurring here, so that this protection is provided and these people are isolated against all protest.
Yeah, they want to isolate them because there's more and more opposition to all three of these organizations.
For example, the Bilderberg meeting, although they like to meet at five-star hotels, I bet you they'll start meeting at five-star hotels in America from now on. Yeah. Not all over the world like they're customarily do.
And of course, the Bilderbergers are so secret, no one even really knows when they're happening.
Yeah, well, we can find out when they're happening now. That seemed, but no one can still get near them. Now they'll be able to keep them away even further, so that people like Alex Jones and his group, who always go there and bullhorn them, won't be able to do that anymore. They won't even be allowed within any distance that would make that a reasonable protest.
Yeah, this is bad news for, like you said, protests and even reasonable protests.
I think this will wind up in front of the Supreme Court very quickly, and the court will have to address it.
I think this is really a rule for this summer. I think they're really expecting trouble.
I think they know the court won't be able to address it before the conventions, because someone will have to claim that they've been damaged by the law. And that won't happen until June or July or September. And then, the court will hear it. But it will give them at least this summer and this political cycle, this convention cycle, to get away from it.
I think that's all it's really designed to, is get through this year,
because it's... Okay.
Well,
let's talk about CISPA real briefly also. The Cyber Internet Security and Protection Act. This is SOPA 2.0, and it is even worse than the original, because this will essentially militarize this act. It will allow the military to become involved because the NSA will begin to be able to provide information to private corporations, which it currently supposedly is not allowed to do.
Well, the progressives and the Democrats and the Republicans, they can't stand an unregulated internet. What can I say?
This is the same thing that we were talking. What they're doing physically to protesters at physical locations, they're now trying to do to any dissent by people on the internet in cyberspace.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, if I happen to send you an email or something saying I don't approve of something that Congress or the President does, is that dissent?
Yeah, that's dissent. Well, the issue here is that the FBI gets to decide who is a dissenter and who is not based on any warrant that they have to obtain from a court to prove. They have to provide reasonable cause.
Yeah, I heard that there's not even a standard for language. I could just say, I just disapprove, not that I'm threatening anybody.
It's up to the FBI to determine what is dissent and what is not, and when it rises to the level of terrorism.
Well, and another problem there is the fact that with this particular bill, if it involves a computer, it's judged under a completely different set of rules, which is all entirely outlined there in CISPA.
So we're looking at, this is becoming draconian. Of course, this will, again, I think, wind up before the court, and the court will overturn it because it's just too far-reaching. But it gives them this entire summer. They're also this huge database that the NSA is gathering out at its new facility in Utah, in Bluffdale, Utah, which is just this bottomless pit of information. It's just gathered and stored there. It's an enormous, I guess it's endless. There's no limit to the amount of information that they can store.
Well, yeah, it all sounds very disturbing. I mean, even if it just buys them this summer, at least they got it through for a while. That means they can always tinker with it and try it again.
Oh, yeah. It'll, but they can do a great deal of damage during the few months or year that they'll have access to this legislation. Unless, of course, CISPA has only passed the House of Representatives. Their bill was approved 2 days ago.
Well, anybody who's listening, I encourage you to email or write your senator.
Yeah, get your senator, because they have their own version of the bill, which still has to pass the Senate, and then there has to be a conference bill to work out the differences between the House and Senate versions to come up with one bill that will be presented to the Congress. Now, the President has indicated that the White House, he will veto the bill.
Yeah, he's
but of course
he
promised to veto NDAA as well.
Exactly.
And we saw where that went.
Yeah.
No, I think the president's starting to lose his trustworthiness and his promises.
He lost his his trustworthiness when he started with the oath of office. I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear. We got to so help me God. It was like, well, his lips are moving. He's lying.
Yeah.
Which was an interesting omen. I remember sitting in my office watching that on the internet. The swearing in, and the fact that the whole oath of office was flubbed up by the Chief Justice and the President, and then they had to do it all over again in the White House that night, and the President, of course, forgot his Bible. So it's just it was a bad omen, a bad start to what's turned out to just be an entire disastrous event in American history.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, this COVID is one of those low points in American history.
Please, everyone, go look up CISPA, understand what it is, understand how much greater a reach it has into your privacy than SOPA did. Because now it's not just the private sector asking for the right to cut off someone's access. It now is the government providing information to the private sector about individuals' activities on the internet. This is really very, very bad.
I guess the next step is they want to put predator drones in the U.S. now, right? I guess the next thing.
Oh, well, no, yeah. Well, since you brought that up, there's an interesting issue there. They're trying to determine what the drones can be used for. There are now 50 cities in the United States that have at least one drone. Their police department has one drone.
That's
50 cities. 50 cities have one drone, which are equipped with grenades, tasers. They have these very exotic weapons on them. I mean, Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin would be drooling at the mouth to have such hardware at their disposal.
This is getting worse than the most horrifying science fiction novel, isn't it?
Yes. George Orwell, or Arthur Eric Blair, as his real name was, really missed it on this one. He missed it. Yeah. It's much worse than anything. Can you imagine one of these drones? You're sitting in your living room at night watching TV. You have your drapes open, and this drone comes down and looks in the window to spy on you to find out what you're doing. That's what they can do.
Yeah, or they can follow your car.
They can follow your car. Because the problem is they're having trouble with this spying that they were doing by putting a listening or tracking device under the wheel well of your car. That was becoming questionable, and the courts were getting very upset about that. So they had to find a new way to do it. Now they're going to use the drones.
Well, I don't know. Like I said, this gets more horrifying. I feel like I'm living through one of those bad sci-fi movies of the 90s,
Yes, it's getting, So we need to be aware of what is happening here, and we need to start protesting these things and stopping them. It's time to throw out the entire Congress and elect all new people. It's the only way that these people will understand what is going on.
By the way, do they have any of these drones on the border with Mexico?
Oh, no, we don't send them down. I think there's one.
No, they're all up in Canada.
But they're not watching the people on the Mexican side of the border come across. They're spying on the people who might be trying to protect our border. So they're not doing anything about border control enforcement. They're only watching for...
This is going to transition well into Eric Holder, our next segment.
Yeah. So let's move on. I just want everyone to be aware of this. Take a look at this. This is very dangerous stuff that's going on. And the worst part is that the Democratic members of the House Intelligence Committee are the ones proposing and sponsoring and forwarding these bills. This is not the George Bush crowd. This is the Barack Obama crowd that's promoting this.
I've actually heard some of the George Bush crowd on talk radio. They're amazed that the president's getting away with this stuff, and they could get away with hardly anything.
Yes, it's just one of those. So let's move on to the scandals in the White House and the Justice Department. John Corzine. Let's talk about him real briefly here.
Oh, my favorite politician.
Yeah, there still no indictment, no citation for contempt of Congress. He has not provided the information to the Congress that they subpoenaed from him. A major donor to the Barack Obama campaign in the last election.
He managed to lose his clients' money, but he's managed to become a major bundler for Obama.
Yes, how is this possible? And they still have not refunded all the money. They haven't been able to find it, apparently, to the people who lost their savings.
You like that one?
Daniel just brought up Sergeant Schultz from the old show Hogan's Heroes, sitting in front of Congress at the table, I know nothing. I know nothing.
That's Eric Holder. That's definitely Eric Holder. Whenever he goes up there, that's what I hear. I know nothing.
I know nothing, and John Corzine, I know nothing.
Yeah.
So this is just, this is outrageous. Yeah, it's John Corzine. It's John Corzine as Sergeant Schultz. So, but this issue is rather important because I want everyone to understand, and I'm going to start talking about this more frequently. It's going to become an issue for me personally.
Okay.
I think we're looking at, weather-wise, we're having droughts, famines. There are going to be issues with growing food in this country and around the world. And there's going to be a big issue because of John Corzine. Many farmers in this country had their money invested without their knowledge in MF Global. Those 3 pages of very fine print, 2-sided, that you sign every time you open a bank account. Buried in that is a statement that allows that bank to sell your account or to give it to another bank for investment. And many farmers had their savings given to IMF Global, or MF Global,
seed money,
and now they have no money to purchase seeds for the upcoming season. So they have nothing to grow. We are going to see the price of food increase, I understand, by 30 to 50% across the remainder of this year.
I think I'm going to get a bumper sticker that asks, why is John Corzine free?
Yes. Why is this man who tried to undermine the commodities market and invested all that money not in America? All that money was invested in European bonds, in banks, in European bank bonds. Why? Knowing he knew.
Walking around free.
Yes, why is he walking around free? Why is he free? Now, why has no criminal... He committed a crime. A financial crime. Why is he not in jail?
Well, it's because it's a crime in Obama's favor there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
he's overlooking
Obama bundler.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter that he lied to Congress.
Doesn't matter that he lied to Congress. They stole people's money. This is just outrageous. And this goes into another issue, which has got a lot of time, the XL pipeline. Most people don't tie this together, but George Soros is involved in that. Another Obama bundler. Big time financial contributor. Because, Obama said, okay, I'm going to allow the construction of the southern part of the XL pipeline to go ahead. Well, that doesn't mean anything because that part was already put together. It's the middle portion that's the issue. Because no oil can get through the pipeline. And therefore, George Soros, whose ships are over on the western coast of Canada, they're shipping the oil over there, and he is using his ships to carry it over to China. The issue of the
was thorough. It was for Bernie Madoff. He should have just bundled a lot of money for Obama.
Yeah, he didn't, and that's why he's in jail.
Yeah.
They had to sacrifice somebody. So there's Bernie Madoff, is Dr. Evil. So, he needed to... but the issue here is they have hauled the Liberty drilling rig up to Prudhoe Bay in Alaska. And they're going to begin drilling there, or they have begun drilling. They're going to drill about 40,000 feet deep, about 8 miles. And they're going to hit one of the largest oil reserves in the entire world, in the entire history of the world. And they need to bring that oil out. They were going to do it through the XL pipeline. The Alaska pipeline is 35 years old. And it's too old and is worn thin and cannot accommodate the pumping of 2 million barrels of oil a day, which is what they estimate they'll be pumping. And that oil was going to come down from the XL pipeline through Canada, down through the United States, to the refineries in Texas, and then some of it would be offloaded onto ships and shipped, and the gas would be here, and we would not be paying $6 a gallon. But Obama held that up and kept it at bay for many weeks in order to ensure that Saudi Arabia could continue to be our major supplier of oil.
Well, you just got to follow the money on that one.
Yeah, follow the money on that one. Because why are we paying this was a couple of months ago. We were paying $106 a barrel for Saudi Arabian oil that had to travel by tanker 7,500 miles to arrive here in the United States. Instead of paying $33 a barrel for oil from Canada that traveled 500 miles if the pipeline had been finished.
Well, does this relate at all to our agreement with the Arabs that we would buy their oil at a certain marked price?
Well, we can change that.
Deal?
We can change that at any time if we choose to supply our own oil. You know, and buy it from other countries.
Many of us thought George Bush was too close to the Saudi royal family.
Yeah, it's this is just
George Bush was. Well, yeah, we have to open up Anwar.
Yes, we have to open that. Well, we're opening up Prudhoe Bay. Finally, they're going to open the rest of that up and get that oil out of there. The problem is, how are we going? We cannot ship it out of there because the Arctic freezes over in the winter. You can't get the oil out of there. So we have a very serious problem here, and it's definitely who is funding Barack Obama's campaign. And I'll bet you anything there's a lot of money going into the campaign from Saudi sources.
Oh, I'm sure there is.
You know, and if you look at, we've been talking about these cybersecurity bills and so on. Remember the Saudi prince who bought a huge amount of shares in Google, who supported and the passage of SOPA and so on, and now that's why I'm not sure that when the president says they won't sign CISPA, I think definitely he will. Because the same people are funding it. It's probably just not as stringent as he wants it to be, just like NDAA was not as stringent as he wanted it to be.
Oh, he'll sign it. I mean, we know Barack Obama, among other things, is a serial liar.
Oh, he's bought and paid for, so.
Yeah. So this is we're all back to following the money in the campaign season.
Exactly.
You know, and this all goes back to who are the big donors.
Yep. Who's being catered to here?
Let's tackle the other running. Well, there's 3 other running scandals. I guess we can hit them all quick, fast and furious. I hear Darrell Issa is actually preparing a contempt of Congress charge against Eric Holder.
Good. It's about time. Well, you know, his chief deputy, his chief assistant, Holder's chief assistant, was about to be cited for contempt of Congress as well. And he has resigned and is going to teach law at some law school in the Midwest. He's going to become president of the law school, dean of the law school there.
Maybe he could teach a class on lying to Congress.
Yeah, that's about. Well, he's got enough experience in it. Yeah. Teach an administrative law course on how to avoid subpoenas.
Now, for those of us who don't know it,
lie to Congress. Yeah.
For those of us who don't know, what is this? What is this Fast and Furious scandal? Go ahead and catch us up.
Fast and Furious. Eric Holder's Justice Department entered into an agreement to supply arms.
Guns.
He was selling arms, guns. Now it turns out grenades and other things as well. It's being released, but they were selling AK-47s, assault rifles, all types of weapons to the drug cartels in Mexico, with the idea that they would then trace the guns because they apparently were coming back to the United States. They were being used by the drug cartels in assaults on our border patrol guards and on citizens across the Arizona border. And they would be tracked. Very stupid idea. Instead, all those weapons wound up, just being dispersed all over the place.
Yeah, the question becomes, well, fine, you can track it, but yeah, that just means that the gun that just killed this agent, guess what? You sold it to the bad guy.
Well, we have a case where a Border Patrol agent was killed with one of these guns.
Yeah, Brian Terry.
Yeah.
Brian Terry was killed.
Brian Terry, and there's been, they've tried to bury that in the media.
Well, what they expect would happen when you sell the guns to the enemy?
Yep. Yeah. Well, this is all against. This is against the law. There is a law that forbids us doing this, and we have the chief law enforcement officer in the nation leading a program to violate the law.
Yeah, wasn't this when the Iran-Contra affair? What's his name?
Oh, Reagan? Yeah, Reagan selling arms illegally to our enemies.
Exactly. Isn't that the same thing? We cleared up the law back then.
And the funds being used to buy weapons which is illegal for us to do, again.
So he should be charged with treason. Is that what we're coming to the conclusion?
Well, he's not a traitor, but he's definitely a criminal.
Well, he's selling selling arms to the enemy. That's treasonous, I would think.
And that doesn't fall into the technical definition of treason. They're not a nation, and we're not at war with them technically.
Yeah. Where did the money go that Eric Holder got for the guns?
Well, that's a good question.
Oh, that went to the GSA for their
for their party. Yes, their party fund.
That went to the GSA.
The GSA party fund.
With the GSA and the Secret Service scandal, heads have already started to roll. But nothing's rolled. Nobody's heads rolled on Fast and Furious, and it's a way more important scandal than the other two.
What do you think that possibly they're promoting in the media, the GSA and the Secret Service scandals, in order to detract attention from the much more serious issue of Fast and Furious and the problems at the Justice Department? They've sacrificed 5 Secret Service agents now who've been forced to retire.
Well, at least Eric Holder has made Janet Reno look like a better attorney general.
Well, yeah, and that's saying something. I mean, she was so bad that you thought no one could possibly. Yeah, I mean, the Obama administration is making the Clintons look good. I mean, I never thought I'd say that. The Clinton administration doesn't look so bad.
No, I'm okay with the president gets caught in a sex scandal, but this stuff is getting hardcore here.
Well, the problem is...
Yeah, I thought Janet Reno was the worst attorney general in history, but I've been proven wrong.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
It's just gotten much worse with this current administration. So, but that was the assistant is resigning, retiring, and they thought that might appease Congress, but apparently not. Representative Issa has had enough. This is just ridiculous. He can't. He's evaded. Holder has evaded ignored and defied the Congress of the United States for way too long. And so now
maybe
they're
he'd get a position teaching how to lie to Congress.
well, that's probably what he's going to do. Now, I can't believe that any university would hire him. With that type of scandal,
Just suck him right up.
you know, I just wouldn't think anyone would hire him. But
Maybe he'd get a job with the drug cartels.
you know, well, this is
Maybe
just the
boy.
beginning. I think this is going to get these scandals are going to be revealed more and more as we get into the campaign season. And personally, I think the president has really offended the oligarchy, the elite that control the oil companies, and they're not going to allow him to be reelected. You know, you don't piss those people off and think you're going to walk away from it. Eric?
Yeah, well, I agree with you. This has been the most scandal-ridden, corruption-ridden administration I ever saw. Like I said, I thought Janet Reno would be the worst attorney general I ever saw, but Eric Holder has proved me wrong.
No. Here.
I mean, I feel like I'm living in a third-world country. I've said this before. They don't even hide the corruption in this administration.
Oh, no.
It's right in front of your face.
It's almost as if, yeah, this is what we're doing. Do something about it. You know?
Yeah, John Cusack's walking around right in front of your face. Eric Holder, all of them.
Yeah, it's just, you know, we just don't seem to care. You know, the American people are not rising up as they ought to in protest. You know, I'm waiting to see the Tea Party and the Occupy movement join forces later in the summer. You know, when this stuff just becomes, where it's just realized that the only thing we can do is get rid of all these people. The government is way too corrupt. The executive branch, the Congress, you know, the legislative branch, all of it is just rife with corruption.
Well, I'm wondering if it isn't possible that the elite just said, yeah, fine, do whatever you want. We need America to come down and have fun.
Well, they put in all the legislation in order to be able to do that. Essentially, the Patriot Act, the CISPA, all these things that are these pieces of legislation that have been enacted over the last decade have recreated Hitler's Enabling Act.
Exactly.
If you look at Hitler's Enabling Act and you look at the current state of our national security legislation in this country, they're exactly identical. They mirror one another. And so what we have is a national socialist government, a totalitarian police state.
Well, as the Chinese curse says, we're living in interesting times.
Yes, you know, too interesting for my comfort.
Well, and the funny part is they're not exactly worried about it either. As many people can talk about it as they want. They don't care. You know, nobody's barging down our door here at the studio to stop us from broadcasting because they just don't care. They know it's all out there, and they don't care.
Yeah, we're not broadcasting.
No, the mainstream media has not made any issue of any of it.
No, it's only small broadcast or internet broadcast, internet TV that's made an issue of these things. And, of course, people are turning away from the mainstream media because they listen to it, and it's ridiculous. It's one meme playing off against another meme every day.
Well, that's
and sometimes you get one meme in the morning and you get another meme in the evening.
Well, that's why they're trying to get control of the internet.
Yeah.
If you say or do anything that they don't like that involves a computer, they have a whole new set of powerful rules that they can come after you with. That's why they keep pushing it. Eventually, one of these things is going to pass, and I just hope everybody is digitally above board whenever it does.
Well, this is where we're at, folks. And it's going to get a lot worse before it gets any better, I think. You know, I hate to be pessimistic, but I think being realistic is just sounding pessimistic. It just doesn't look good because people are not involved, and they're not not paying attention.
Yeah, we need every single person we can get our hands on out there talking, communicating, anything you could do to talk to your senators and your congressmen. We need visibility on the things that they're doing wrong, because obviously the media, the major media, is failing us completely.
The CISPA thing, they thought, well, the people will rest on their laurels because they defeated SOPA. But we'll come back with something even worse, and they'll think that they don't need to address it because they defeated SOPA. They've already had a victory. So we'll come with something even worse.
Well, again, everything is, eventually they're going to have one of these things that passes.
No. Well, let's all be vigilant. Let's pay attention to what's going on, and do not pay any attention to the mainstream media. They're not reporting the truth. They're reporting what they're paid to report by the 5 corporations that control the media in this country.
Mm-hmm.
They're told what to report, and if they don't report it the way the editors, the publishers want it, they get fired.
Well, that's exactly why we came up with this show, is we were tired of all the lies that they were spewing on the major shows. So.
And I'll show you a really good meme that's going on that everyone can be aware of. We had Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, over here, telling the President and the American people that we needed to attack Iran immediately because they were moments away from developing a nuclear device if they hadn't already done so. The head of the general staff of the Israeli Defense Forces has come out and said Iran does not have and is not developing a nuclear weapon. How can you have 2 officials of the same government saying diametrically opposed things? Those are memes. They're designed to frustrate, irritate, confuse, and frighten everybody. It is trying to develop a herd mentality and then drive the sheeple exactly where they want us to be. So you need to study these issues out, and you need to avoid anything you hear in the mainstream media. It's the same as do not pay attention to the stock market. It doesn't mean anything at all.
The radical highs and lows.
It doesn't mean anything.
Exactly.
If you want to know when the financial collapse is going to happen, pay attention to the derivatives market. When that cracks, the financial collapse is at hand. But so far, they've been able to keep the derivatives going. So that's the issue. Derivatives, not stocks, not the price of gold or silver or any of that. None of that has anything to do with anything. But it's a good way to divert you and confuse you and keep you frightened and confused.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the end of our show for this evening. Anything else that you two wanted to discuss before we close off?
No, just everybody have a good weekend.
Okay, this is our... we will not be broadcasting next week. We will be broadcasting the following week. Okay? So this is our new format. We broadcast 2 weeks in a row. We take 1 week off and broadcast the 4th week. So we'd like to remind everyone of Eric's blog at processidealism.blogspot.com. Go there and peruse his articles and essays. And certainly if you want to discuss one, if you have comments, we'd be happy to have him take some time to discuss that, and we'd be happy to hear from you. I'd also like to remind you...
Go ahead.
Well, anybody who wants to leave a comment, if you leave your email address, I'll get back to you.
Okay. Also, we'd like to remind you of Daniel's blog at danielheath.com. .com. I didn't want to put Blogspot in there if it wasn't there.
That's Daniel Heath without an A.
Daniel Heath.
Yep.
HETH.com.
Yep.
And you can go there and get all kinds of interesting articles and observations, especially if you're into internet, computers, cybersecurity, all of that. There's a mine of information there that he provides. And of course, I'd like to remind you of our hashtag, WIRTV. Also our email, David, Eric, or Daniel at weekinreview.tv. We thank you for joining us. We hope you have a good week, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Again, I'm David Smith, and this is Week in Review.
What's the most effective tool we have to prevent people from crossing the border?
Obamonomics.